Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
You're welcome.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your background in theater? What drew you to theater?
Okay, so I'm from Nova Scotia originally, and I, as a 5-year-old, took dance because my little next door neighbor friend was taking dance. So dance all my life, ballet, tap, jazz, modern, whatever. And then when I was in high school, my dance teacher at the time said, you know what, you could probably do this for a living, why don't you apply? I examine in London, England every year, and here are a list of a couple of schools for you to apply. So I sent a couple of VHS tapes, which at the time were this big. This was 1977, I guess, 1976, 77. And so I did. So I sent these applications in of me dancing and singing and so on. And one of the schools that I wanted to go to accepted me, and so I went. So for 2 years I spent time in South London and in Kent, going to a school called Bird College. So I did that for 2 years, and then I came back, and then I was employed in the theater pretty much constantly. I had some dry spells, but for the most part, I've been very lucky to be employed. So started as a dancer, always sang as a kid, was very comfortable singing, and acting was something that comes along with that, and that's something that I trained in as well.
Did anyone in your family also pursue an artistic career?
No, but my mother might have. If it wasn't the 40s and the 50s, she might have become a singer. She had a very strikingly beautiful voice, and she took singing lessons and was very encouraged by her teacher to continue, but it was a very hard thing for a woman to decide to not do the traditional thing. So she did the traditional thing, married, had 4 children, sang in the church choir, but she was a huge influence, and almost subliminally, in that there was always musical LPs in the house, and she too was very interested in musicals and that sort of thing. She's also she's since passed, but she was a real opera buff. Not that she really sang opera, but she loved it and watched it, listened every Saturday to the radio, CBC radio, to the opera, and baked along with listening to the opera. So I always heard her. And so the two of us would often, just for fun and joking around, would talk to each other in a pseudo-opera voice, sort of recitative. So she would say, Barbara, can you get me the blah, blah, blah? And I would say, of course, mother! You know, just silliness. So she was definitely an inspiration for music.
And how did your family react when you told them that you want to be a dancer?
Well, I think they kind of always knew I had that kind of personality, that I was very comfortable with expressing myself through movement and however else. When I danced, it was pure joy. I really just had a beautiful time dancing. It was hard. My body wasn't really the perfect body for a ballet dancer. Ballet was really specific and hard, and the kind of expression was different than jazz and tap and sort of musical theater dance. Musical theater dance, I really got to express who I really am. So they were, my mother I think was very pleased. My dad didn't say very much. My sisters and brothers kind of ignored me. They all had government jobs. They were teachers. My brother was a marine electrician on a Coast Guard ship in Dartmouth, Halifax, and my brother was a building inspector in Yarmouth in Nova Scotia. So, yeah, they didn't really get it. They're not the least bit interested. Although my older brother, the person who's in Yarmouth, he's a fiddle player and loves music and was in the Yarmouth Orchestra and all that sort of stuff. But I'm the only one who's decided to, okay, I don't have any other skills. This is all I know how to do. I'm going to do it.
Do you think someone is born an actor?
It's hard to say. I was listening yesterday to some footage of Maggie Smith being interviewed as a younger woman, as an older woman, and she was talking about none of this occurred to her at all, except when she got to high school, and she had a teacher, an English teacher, who really inspired her with the language of Shakespeare. And that really ignited something in her, a passion in her. But before that, there was never any thought for her. So same thing happened to me. In high school, I ended up getting involved in the musicals that they were presenting. And also in high school, something happens I think it's always there. I was always affirmed as a child as a dancer. You look like you're having a great time, and I was. But in high school, I got all this acclaim from my peers who kept telling me how wonderful I was. And that affirmation really does affect where you feel like you belong. So that's what happened. I'm not sorry.
How old do you think is too old to start an acting career? If someone is like 30 or I don't know, 25, like is it too old to start cold?
You know, you can start cold, but you can't start cold thinking you know everything, because, you know, as much as most people think, oh, acting, I can do that, I do that all the time when I'm telling white lies or whatever, there is a huge amount of technique that never, ever, you don't ever know it all. Every job is specific, every script is specific, every character is specific. So I think that it would be foolhardy for me to say, yes, you can start at any time and not do anything about it. You can start any time, but you have to put in the hours and the work and the training.
Tell me about your training, please.
Sure. Well, so the dance training was a given as a kid, but I really didn't take it seriously as a kid. Nobody ever really, especially since it was ballet that I did for the first 8 years, nobody ever said, you could be a ballet dancer, because clearly I didn't have the right kind of body or the right discipline or the right poise. I was just a kid in there having fun with my friends. But when I got to England, my training was a lot more specific, and we were examined. I mean, I was examined as a kid for ballet and always did well, but nobody ever really pushed me to be serious about it. And my mother was never pushing for me to be serious about it. She was just happy to see me happy. But in England, it was a lot more serious, obviously. It was a school, and we were trained in all kinds of disciplines, acting, singing, dancing. And that's when I started to realize, oh, this is hard work. You really have to put in the time. It's not just fun and games. Up till then, it had been. Although I did do a year at Dalhousie University in Halifax, and I was in the drama department, and I learned there just how much work it was to, we weren't actually in the first year acquiring skills so much as exposing ourselves to all kinds of material and trying things out, scene study and directing and just dabbling in a lot of things. So that's when I learned that it was a lot of work. When I came back and I started getting professional work, that obviously too was a time when I realized, oh, okay, there's a lot of expectations here. I gotta rise to it. And it was fun. I loved the challenge of rising to it. And then I ended up for many, many years, 22 seasons in all, at the Stratford Festival. And that was a totally different experience. That was a very cerebral experience as opposed to a physical one. And I'd been very used to physicality in my work. And then all of a sudden I had to switch gears and think about it all differently. And that was a big challenge. Big challenge to focus in that way. But it was delicious, I gotta say, to start unpacking and discovering a lot of what Shakespeare was trying to talk about. It was just so much life lesson in that text that I loved it. I just loved it. I miss it.
So you started working there in 1991, right? At Stratford.
Mm-hmm.
How did you become involved with this company?
Well, it wasn't really up to me, although it sort of is. That festival has an incredible amount of resources offered to the actors while they're there during a season. They have a thing called the Young Company. When I first started, it was called the Young Company. Now it's called the Conservatory. And it is classical theater training, very intensive. A lot of it happens in the fall through the winter and a little bit in the spring, and the students are always involved in the season, so they always have parts to do in the season, sometimes very small, sometimes bigger, but that's the kind of thing that I was never involved in, because I went there quite a bit older than a lot of the students that are involved in the conservatory. But because there are coaching classes where you can work either on the text or you can work on your voice and how your voice is produced, not your singing voice, but your speaking voice. And the coaching staff is very involved in helping you through any difficulties you may have with the work that's demanded of you. And then there's also workshops, people that come in and offer workshops. there's always something to learn. There's always some fascinating person speaking or something that you can take part in, which has to do with the world of theater or the world of the play. So if you're doing Taming of the Shrew, for instance, there's always people coming in talking about either that text or that period of time in Elizabethan England and all the things that make sense in the text to give it context. So that stuff is amazing. And also, there was lots of teaching experience, teaching opportunities there to teach students key points about the Shakespeare plays. When they come, they have hooks that they can grab onto, like lots of school groups go, and so they had an army of actors doing workshops here and there for all the plays to help the kids really get into the play a lot quicker and easier. And also their teachers were preparing them as well, but the added experience, the tactile experience of us working with them really helped. And once you start teaching, you actually have to really figure out what it is you know and what you want to say. So that also was a teaching experience for me, a learning experience for me.
And what's the most important thing for you to say when you teach them?
When I finished...
When you teach these kids,
when you teach the kids?
What's the most important lesson that you know?
It's funny, because often at the very end of all these little workshops that we would do, there were question and answers. And often the kids would say, how did you get into the business? Do you have a boyfriend? Are you married? Like all these silly little things, especially if they're younger. And they often say, what do you suggest we do to get into the business? And, a lot of us would always try to reiterate, you have to train. You have to go into a school that is going to give you a broad spectrum of the things that you want to try to do in this business. And that's the most important thing I think we could pass on, was you can't just decide you're going to do it willy-nilly. It's serious and it's hard work, and it requires a lot of study and a lot of practical work.
What are the best programs in Canada, like universities with theatre programs?
It's hard for me to say because it's been a long time since I was in that environment. I can say that I know that there are schools that have good reputations. I know George Brown has a good reputation. I know Ryerson has a good reputation. York does. National Theatre School, of course, and the Stratford Festival seems to use a lot of National Theatre students in their company. A lot of the people who are now major leading actors in their company did train there. But it's hard to say because sometimes somebody can come along and have this incredibly unique talent and have the right kind of voice and the right kind of body and look for period costume and all that sort of thing, and they will be very successful. But there's also, like Sheridan College is a really amazing school as well, mostly teaching music theater skills. But if you're a good actor, you can translate those skills into a play very easily.
And how do you get an agent when you graduate? You're done with your education, you have this training, but now you're looking for an agent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just learning about this because when I came back from England to Canada and moved to Toronto, I just phoned a few agents and I got one like that. Times were very different back then. I think I also had a job, so it's much easier when you have a job because they can collect money from you right away, but also they know that you're serious and capable. But now what they do at the end of the year of a theater school is agents will often come and see the final production that the school does, and if they're interested in certain actors, they will ask to have meetings and see if the relationship could work. Also, Theatre Ontario is an organization that will hold, not massive auditions, but they will hold auditions for young people exiting school, and agents will come. So it's like a showcase, and that's the sort of thing that can happen. Often, too, you just have to keep knocking on doors. If that doesn't work, if you don't, if you miss the opportunity to do those auditions, or an agent see your work, the best thing to do is for an agent to see your work. So if you do a play anywhere, even if it's unprofessional, you're not being paid, it doesn't hurt at all to invite agents to see if they want to come and see it and see your work. And often, if an agent is really curious, they'll come and something can work out from there. But it's a process. It doesn't just happen like that.
When did you first hear about Come From Away musical?
Well, I had a friend of mine in Stratford was in the original company on Broadway. His name is Lee McDougall, and I also know his husband, so I was just talking to them and figuring out what this was. And at the time, Lee didn't even really know because he hadn't really gotten to the bottom of it yet. They spent 2 years developing it, but they were in the States developing it down in California, so I didn't hear much about it. And then I started, once they were ready and it was traveling all over the place and it was getting all this acclaim, you just keep doing this. And then I was hearing more and more that it was normal people who were of all ages. You didn't have to be able to be a fabulous dancer. You didn't have to be able to be a fabulous singer. This was about, telling these stories that were true. So I kept kind of thinking, I should probably look into that because I'm getting older. I'm not going to have a career at the Stratford Festival forever. I want to find out more what this is. And then I kept hearing my friends talking about their auditions and how kind of the buzz around it was huge. And I didn't have an agent at the time. I didn't have an agent the whole time I was at Stratford. Did my own negotiating, and I just thought, I don't need one. That's a lot of money down the tubes if all I want to do is work here. And I did. And so I had to get an agent. So I got myself an agent, and then I sent in a request to audition for the casting director. And they said, you missed the original audition, send in a tape and we'll decide whether or not to invite you to the final callback. And so that's what happened. And I did get asked to do the show after that. But I'm just so glad that there was one conversation that I heard a couple of friends having where I just thought, oh my God, what am I waiting for? I have to get on this. And I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did.
And what did you have to record on the tape?
They sent me sides, which is pieces of the script that my character says, and also the song that my character sings with Nick. And they also sent a couple of choral things that we all do together, which was kind of important for them to know whether or not I could convey the feeling of the song. And so I did that. And I asked a friend to film me doing it, and I just had all the stuff prepared, and they ran the camera, and I did it. Sent it in, hoped for the best, and then I got a call. But yeah, you usually get sent pieces of the script. And I got sent two or three different characters. But the main character I knew they were interested in me for, and I was interested as well, was Diane.
Did you see the show before audition?
No, I had listened to the soundtrack. And, being from the East Coast, I listened to the soundtrack and I went, oh my God, this is perfect for me. So I got more excited once I heard the soundtrack.
And when was the first meeting of all the cast members?
I want to say November 26th or 27th, whatever the Monday was, of 2017. And we began rehearsals that day. We dove right in and started learning all those chair moves right away. Yeah.
Tell me about the spike marks on your stage.
Well, it was all like it was a completely different language from another planet when we first started. It was overwhelming because our rehearsal space did have a setup where we had a revolve. And of course, stage management gets in there way before we come in, and they mark everything exactly how it's supposed to go. And it's now a science because a show has already been running on Broadway and they know exactly what it is, and there's a Bible text and we do it exactly like they're doing it. We bring our own particular quirky personality things to it, but as far as the mechanism of the show goes, it's identical. So we had to, the way they rehearsed it, and I don't know whether if you've interviewed anybody else about this, but we rehearsed it in the fashion of, okay, we're going to do this section, and it's a slow go. Everybody learns their thing, and everybody learns what they're supposed to do in a particular, like a 1 minute or a 2 minute section of the show, because, as you know, things are changing constantly. And we might have run that once, but we may not have. I can't really remember. But anyway, we learned a section, great. Then we learned a next section, great. And then a next section. And we didn't ever spend days reviewing what we had done yesterday. We just kept moving forward. until the day where we had gotten through the entire thing, and then we had to, okay, we're going to run it. And it was just madness. It was madness. We did probably better than we thought we would, but we lost a lot of sleep. We just wanted to do so well, and we simply couldn't retain that much information. Some people did way better than others. I was, not so great at times because I just couldn't believe how much specific teeny-weeny information there was. Plus, we're not really familiar with the order of things until you've done it a few times. I'd read it probably 6 or 7 times before I got to the rehearsal, but that's not the same as having it in your body. Having it in your body is the only way to know it. So, learned most of the lines before I got there, but once I was on my feet and trying to incorporate all of the other elements, the lines just went. And
How
eventually,
long did it take you to learn the lines?
not that long, because I didn't have that many. Diane doesn't have a lot of lines. The trickiest part is to learn your cue, to learn when I have to speak. And none of it is linear. It's all little vignettes. So it's not like it is a continuous story that you can, this is the part where I'm going to come in a logical way. You just have to learn, it's just memorization. Memorization and repetition. So the repetition of being in rehearsal is what did it.
So do you have to memorize the lines of other actors as well to know your cue, or?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Not all of them, but the last couple of lines that they say, that's when your blood starts to speed up and you realize that you're going to have to come in. And the idea, too, because the play goes at such a pace and they don't want any pauses and acting, and, they really just wanted it to go lickety-split, you had to be really on it, and whenever your cue was up, to come right in. And sometimes you're on the move when these things happen. Sometimes my first line happens, I have to get up, and I think it's when we start doing the walk, and the revolve hasn't started, but she just finishes speaking. She moves out of the way, and I come in right behind her with my line, and then the revolve starts to move, and then we're all speaking as the revolve is moving, as we're walking the opposite direction when we're doing that walk. That was a very tricky thing to negotiate all the spatial elements as well. But it's amazing. Humans can do a lot of things with enough repetition. We can do it, and we did it.
Did you have a prior experience of working with revolve?
Yes, yeah, I had quite a bit of experience working with revolve, so that didn't throw me off. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a moment in Costume Party where I have to say to the Nick character, I can't sit here. I need to get some air. And then I have to leave. And the revolve is moving, and I have to walk this around a chair and then around another one and then land behind another chair or land beside a chair getting ready to sit down. And the wall is moving. Well, I'm moving, but it looks like everything else is moving. And so to remember that route was really tricky. And then there's the odd time where, and it doesn't happen anymore, thank goodness. But during the beginning, even the person working revolve had to learn those cues and not mess up. And if they did, and the revolve wasn't working, then we had to all of a sudden readjust where front was because front didn't end up where we thought it was going to. So,
How about prop exchanges?
I don't have many of those.
Because they happen constantly in this show, so fast, the audience barely notices how did the character transform to someone else.
The character changes are really fun. I love doing that. The character changes literally for me are often jacket on for Diane or sweater on for Diane and jacket and sweater off for Crystal or Brenda working in the bar. And that's not a huge challenge for me. For whatever reason, that's really fun. And that is the fun of getting to do this, is switching so quickly. But prop exchanges, I think I just marvel at how they ever put that together. They must have almost had to do the play or think about the play backwards in order to, when they were putting it together down in California, in order to figure out all those sweater exchanges and all the things. I'm quite unaware of all that stuff. My character, she doesn't move a lot of chairs. She does occasionally, but she also doesn't do a lot of prop handoffs to another actor, which happens, I believe, I'm told, but I don't see it. The only thing that I have to do sometimes is take a couple of things off, but that's it.
What is it like to walk on these chairs when the
Oh,
revolve
yeah.
going on?
I don't mind that. I've also had experience on stage where I had to fly. So I was put in a harness in Stratford. I think it was 2000. I had to be on the balcony of the festival stage, and I was hooked up to a harness, and I was in this long flowing nightgown. I was playing Frumacera in Fiddler, and I had to jump off the balcony and be taken out, and then be taken down, and then taken up and swung back. And you just have to jump with faith that you're completely hooked up, and you know there were crew people checking my harness all the time. So I was very trusting. And I also, what else did I have to do? Well, you know, I had to go way up high and land on the grid up top. I was taken up in this pod, way up into the flies, and then I had to. So heights don't bother me, luckily. And standing on chairs doesn't really bother me. I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I think because I'm a dancer, a lot of spatial, physical stuff I enjoy. I used to love being lifted and thrown. You know, if somebody was going to catch me, I just have complete faith. So that didn't really bother me. The only thing that's bizarre is if that revolve doesn't move, then we just have to kind of park and sing the song and pretend that that was never an element of the song. And that's kind of tricky because you want the audience to see that. It's a very cool thing. So,
Let's talk about the accents.
oh, yeah.
How do you do that? How do you switch?
We had a lot of help, obviously, with Joel Goldis. He helped us with he helped me with the Texan accent as well as the Newfoundland accent. But being from Nova Scotia, there's tons of accents there too, and the Newfoundland accent wasn't completely foreign to me. Also, the year before starting this, in Stratford I did Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I played Mrs. Beaver, and the director had the idea, or maybe it was Mr. Beaver who had the idea, Steve Ross, that we would be from Newfoundland. And so I was already working on that accent a little bit. So that wasn't crazy. We still get notes, I still get notes every once in a while about the Texan. It's very specific, and you know you can slip into another southern accent very easily. But it's just remembering all the connective words sometimes. But last time he was here, which was probably about 3 weeks ago, he only had maybe 4 notes for me, so I thought, oh, good, I'm getting there, a year and a half in. But it's always a challenge to stay on it.
Let's talk about the vocal health. Do you use steamers or something like that, vocal rest?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't talk a lot when I'm not at work, and that's partly because I live alone, but I'm conscious of not using my voice too much. I don't go out at night very much because when you're at a bar, you have to talk loud, it's a strain, and you're never speaking properly when you're in a situation like that. So I do take it easy when I'm not here. I have steamed lots. I have a little personal steamer, like not a big thing, but a little thing, that if my voice is feeling rough, or that if I have a cold, or if there's some kind of irritation on my vocal cords or on my throat, I will steam, because it is the best thing to do for your voice. But also, it's important to just get grounded with your voice before you begin the show. And we have a vocal warm-up, but I'll often do my own little private. We did before plays in Stratford, always a vocal warm-up, and I didn't always go, but when I did, it was so centering and so good to start the show from that place of being completely inside yourself. So if I'm feeling, you know, if the day was crazy or there's a lot going on in my personal life, I will definitely spend some time just centering on how to speak and not force it. We're so mic'd, we don't really have to force it. Although I've often thought you can't back off just because you're mic'd. You have to actually speak as if you weren't mic'd. But hopefully there is some groundedness there, and when it isn't, you're straining here, and it's a problem. Also, there's a lot of times where I'm sitting like this, and I'm speaking to the audience like that, and that puts a strain on you because it's not natural to speak so turned. So sometimes I will just, you know, lessen my angle if I'm feeling tired.
How do you get your voice back quickly if you're sick? Are there some special remedies?
Steam and water. Water is the most important thing for a voice, and rest. So those, you know, those eat your vegetables, you know, blah, blah, blah. But it's just true. And you know, if you have a very serious infection, you have to go and, you know, get antibiotics or whatever. But it's a lot of common sense to just taking care of yourself. And at my age too, I'm also not very interested in going out and drinking very much and all that sort of stuff. So I hardly drink at all anymore. I'll have the odd drink down in the boys' dressing room, but it's not something that I do like I did when I was younger. So I'm pretty lucky vocally so far.
Does alcohol affect your voice?
Mm-hmm.
I thought only cigarettes, I wasn't sure.
Cigarettes do as well, but no, alcohol is actually, it's quite drying, so it's just harsh. And so if you really want to be careful, you probably shouldn't drink too much. It also weakens your immune system to some degree as well. I mean, you know, a drink and a glass of wine here and there is not going to. But I really notice cognitively too now if I have a drink or 2 drinks the night before. The next day I'm like, blah, just blah. So it doesn't agree with me.
Let's talk about, if you don't mind, mental health. How do you deal with, you know, this uncertainty of an actor's job with constant rejections and, you know, it's stressful.
It's very stressful, yeah. I so far have not needed a lot of help with managing all that stress. I have a very supportive partner, and when I'm a mess about something, I know that I can have a conversation with him. When that stress happens, all sorts of other stuff starts to happen too, so that you don't eat properly, so that you don't get enough sleep, and all those things play on your state of mind as well. But also, in a dressing room situation, or you know, depending on who you are, you can get a lot of support from your peers, because we all know what this stress is, and just to voice it sometimes is the most helpful thing you can do, because then you realize you're not alone. If you're sort of keeping it all bottled up, you can imagine that you're the only person dealing with this, and there's a lot of shame involved, whereas we really are all in the same boat. Nobody's a millionaire doing this work. If we were all totally loaded, we probably wouldn't be putting ourselves through 8 shows a week, 6 days a week. So that's kind of how I deal with it. I haven't, honestly, like I said, I haven't really had a terrible time. I have had the odd panic attack, and I say 2 serious panic attacks in my life. One of them was, I found out in Stratford that the understudy that I was covering, we hadn't even opened the show, and we were in rehearsals to do the understudy work, and all of a sudden I realized that the understudy run was being bumped up by a week or 2 weeks, and I was not ready. And it was a part that I loved, and I really wanted to do a good job, and I had a panic attack at home in the evening, completely unrelated. I don't even remember actually even thinking too much about it, but when I reflect back on that, that was the biggest stressor for me at that time, and my husband really helped me through that, got me to count my breathing and just settle me down. I don't remember actually having another one that extreme, but we used to call it stage fright, but now we call it anxiety. But there are still moments on stage where I can get a little bit nervous that, oh, do I know what's coming up? And I've done it over 600 times now, but that sort of thing can enter your mind if you let it. And the discipline is to stay with the text, listen to all the actors. For me, this is my technique. Listen to the story, be completely in, and then I can't let that other voice in.
Some actors told me that touching the flags helped them to stay grounded.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that? Or like touching the stage, like they told me about different techniques.
And I love hearing that, but I've never been somebody who's had that kind of routine before a show. One of my routines before a show is I really stretch my quads. Whether or not that's something that helps me relax, I don't know. And also the actual the routine of getting ready it's familiar. We know exactly what it is. The chat with the people in the dressing room, that also is somewhat of a help. But for me, mostly it is to listen to the text, listen to everybody, just hone in on what people are saying. That's what grounds me.
Do you start on stage left or stage right?
Stage left.
So I heard from some people about this kind of rituals that you do together.
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember how it started? Like, when was the first time, like, who came up with this idea to do it, you know?
Our director. So the director was very keen on this kind of tangible togetherness before we begin, because once we're out there, we don't get a lot of eye contact for the fun of it. There's too much to do, and it's too stylized to ever break what it is you're doing and look at somebody and have a funny little moment. Whereas often in a play, if you're not the person speaking in your background or whatever, you can make sense of looking at someone else with regards to what's being said. And so you can make up your own little routine of what you're doing throughout the show. With this one, it's impossible. There are so many different techniques used to tell this story. So many different conventions all brought together that you have to commit to each convention, and it doesn't involve your scene partners when they're not your scene partner at all. So that sort of thing is really tricky. But this togetherness thing before we go out is, we can do this team. Let's do this team, because we need to be a team. Even though we're not looking at each other very much, we really do need to be a team. And it really helps, and it's just a fun way to begin. And because also, and this isn't something I'm sure the director thought about, maybe it is, but there's no intermission, and there isn't a lot of camaraderie time available, other than before the show and after the show if you choose to, but if you want to go home and look after yourself, then that time isn't available to you either. So this little tiny bit of time beforehand is a connection. And I think it's a really beautiful theater thing. I had a director in Stratford a few times, and he was very keen on the warm-ups that we did were all kinds of games of literally just all kinds of skilled games, but they were physically skilled games as well. And they really helped us get in tune with each other. And not in an ooga-booga kind of way at all, just natural. But it's essential. And we love it. It's goofy, but we love it. Both sides do it.
Yeah, I know that stage I prefer not to talk about it on record, so
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
they're more sensitive about it.
Oh, really?
So only stage left.
Well, maybe we don't go into anything too personal or serious. I don't know what they do over there. We have no idea. We hear them sometimes. We just think, oh, they're being very loud. The audience is going to hear them. But we're very loud sometimes, too. But no, it's fun and games, but it is a routine, and we don't feel right if we don't do it. And we've always done it.
Is there a sense of community? Toronto is a huge city, but it seems like actors know each other, and stage managers, and everyone knows each other, in theater.
We know of each other a lot. If you've worked around quite a bit, me particularly, if they haven't worked at Stratford in the last 25 years, I don't know them. I've just not been in Toronto hardly at all. 2017, I took the year off, and I did a workshop in Toronto, then I did a play in Toronto, then I started doing this. And I saw tons of people I hadn't seen in years who are not working in Stratford, but working everywhere else. And that was really fun. But there's definitely, if you've done a job with somebody, for instance, back in the mid-'80s, I did a job where we did it for 4 years, all told, and those people I feel like I know and will always know, even though, they're all parents now, some of them have left the business, it's all very, very different now, but we are very connected because of that experience. And when you work that hard together on a collective goal, a collective tangible goal, you never forget what those people meant to you. So yeah, I would say that we all kind of know who each other is, and some of us have closer relationships than others.
What was the transition from Stratford to come from away like?
Huge, actually, because I had lived in Stratford and I raised my son there, and it was a beautiful place to work. You're so taken care of. The facility is phenomenal. The festival stage is like none other in the world to me. I don't know all the stages in the world, but I just know how it feels to be out there. It's like a sanctuary. It's incredible. And also I had a huge community of people around me that I had known for many, many years. And the security of that was an incredible thing. Coming here, I had to get a place to live. I have to go home every Sunday night until Tuesday to keep connected to my life there, because I don't want to lose it. And the difference in the company there is over 100 actors, over probably 800 to 1,000 people working for the organization. So there's a huge number of people that you maybe never see, you really rarely connect with. The fact that there are so many actors, and every year you're vying for a position for the next year, and we're all in the same soup. But here, it feels a little bit like that connection isn't as strong. So we are a much smaller company. There's 12 actors on stage. There's 6 others who are not on stage. I can't tell you the number of people that are involved on the crew. I don't really know. I want to say maybe 10. But it's a much smaller number, so you can get to know people a lot easier. It's just a simpler social situation as far as that goes. Yeah, they're just 2 different beasts altogether. I think what I love, and so the difference also is Stratford is not a commercial theater. They are, I forget what you call it right now. Anyway, they're not commercial, and Mirvish is. In Stratford, you cannot take a show off unless you're dying. You cannot often you can't book a show off to go to your sister's wedding or your brother's wedding. There's all these things in your family, in your intimate life, that you can't be a part of because you can never book off a show. There are understudies, but the way they operate is the last thing in the world you're to do is ever book off a show. Here, it's a lot more humane in that there are 6 people who are ready to go at any time. They've been trained, they're being paid, and they're dying to get on, and it doesn't hurt the show for us to take a show off and do whatever it is we need to do. So that, I really appreciate that. Just the age I am too, and knowing the amount of things that I've missed in my life because of being committed. And every summer you're committed. So the world of family often happens in the summer and at Christmas. Christmas I had more time because I didn't work through the Christmas season. But I do really like that about commercial theater. And you take a show off and you're not paid, you know what you're doing. If it's important enough for you to take the show off, you'll do it. And it's not a problem. Unless, of course, all your understudies are busy doing the other people on stage, but, that's just the way it goes.
How do you balance your personal life with this career? Mondays usually is the only day off, at least here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find time for, friends who are not actors, for example?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult, and so therefore, that's a lot of the reason why a lot of the social life of actors is with other actors. Because we all know what that is, we all know the commitment, the time commitment, and often we all have the same periods of time off. That was hard for my family to understand, hard for any family to understand if they're also not in the business, and it's difficult. That is really difficult. I would love someday for that not to be the case, that showbiz people have to work 6 days a week and the rest of the world only works 5 days a week. But that's what it is, and I know why it is. It only makes sense that when ordinary people who have free time can come to the theater, we have to be available to them or we won't have a business,
What's your schedule like? Do you have rehearsal or not sessions in addition to shows?
I want to say maybe once a month we, as a company, are called in for a few notes from Dana, our resident director, or from Bob, who is our music director. And then we're left on our own devices for a long time, and then they'll catch up with us. Bob will watch a show, Dana watches shows, and there's just little tweaks here and there, things that we either forget or we embellish on, and their job is to make sure the show stays as the same product as when the director's left. And that is their job. The show now is in their hands. And we, as normal human beings, start discovering things within the play that we want to, explore, and often that's not the intention of the director, and so we're just, monitored, but not all the time. It's really wonderful. This group of people looking after us is wonderful. And then once in a blue moon, the actual creative team will come and have a look at the show, but that's not very often. We're out of the way. We're also not as sexy as London, England, or Melbourne, or New York, so I get it. I totally get it.
When you say creative team, you mean...
I mean the director, the choreographer, the music director, the lighting designer, the sound designer. That's the creative team. The costume designer. But all that stuff is set. Like, we're not going to change our costumes, and if we do, we'd get in big trouble from our costume head here. because they're very clear as well on what the limitations are. But we're all happy, so we have no reason to change anything. But it just happens naturally. It happens in a play as well, where you see a play on opening night, and then you see it halfway through the season. It's not a different play, but it is much richer, or it's gone off track a little bit. But, you know, it's just human nature to explore the characters more deeply.
Did you get to see the show?
I haven't yet, but they are swinging us out. If we ask, and it's a possibility, then we can watch it. But I haven't yet. No, I'm dying to. But I have seen it before. I think it was the days before we started rehearsing in November of 2017. I flew down to New York to see the show because I wanted to kind of have a feeling of reading the script. I wasn't sure how this was all glued together. I didn't know about the revolve. I didn't know about all the chairs. I just didn't know anything, and it was hard to make sense of. So when I saw it, I could not believe that I was going to be involved in this amazing concept. I was thrilled. So that's the only time I've seen it.
How did you react as an audience member, I guess?
I was just jumping up and down. I had standing room, so I was literally jumping up and down. And the icing on the cake, and it still is, the icing on the cake was when the band started to play at the end of the play. I just thought it was the most incredible thing. Plus, that music really resonates with me because it's, you know, it's a more of an East Coast feel music, so it made me very happy. I was so happy, really happy.
Speaking of band, why do actors look at the conductor? You know, there's these screens that show conductor, and you can watch it from stage.
Well, with choral music, and sometimes when you're singing by yourself, you have to hear, you have to see when the cutoff is, or you have to see when to enter. So sometimes it's not always just musical. Sometimes it's what's just happened, and the music director doesn't cue it until it's happened. And if I'm busy doing something else, I won't know it's happened. I have to get my cue from him that it's happened so that I can begin. Or, you know, if something is going on a little bit longer and therefore we have to sing a little bit longer, then I have to watch for him for us to cut off so that we can all cut off together. So it's quite important. And there have been times when the screens just conked out and there weren't any, and we would have to kind of glance over. But for the most part now, we know our cutoffs, we know the feeling of it. We could do the show without but there's a couple of moments near the beginning where we absolutely need it. So that's why. Every musical now has the conductor on a screen. Even if he's in the pit in front of you, he will be up here too, so that you don't have to direct your eyes down. It's a little bit of a trick that the audience doesn't know that you're getting your cue from up there, but it's important for us to be together. And we've rehearsed it in a room with the conductor right in front of us, and the specificity of what he wants or she wants. It's our job to maintain that.
Can you tell me about the harmonies in this show?
You know, the harmonies in this show, I think there have been times when it's been tricky, where I have just kind of automatically gone to someone else's part, and our music director, Bob Foster, I don't know how he does this, but he hears when one note is off. I don't know how he hears it, but that's his training. And so that, you know, it took some time to learn everything. That said, there's only a few times in the show when it's very ear-bending and very crunchy and the notes are, you know, a semitone apart. So a lot of the time it's very musical, traditionally musical, so that it's kind of easy to figure out what it is. But that took some rehearsing too. The biggest thing that took rehearsing with the music was the intensity of our vocals when someone is speaking. So often we are doing a lot of hushed intensity, and that word got bandied around so much, and you probably heard that from other actors too. And that was tricky. And the vocal production of them not wanting any vibrato in our sustained notes was a huge challenge, because all of us are singers, and that's what it is when you're singing by yourself and singing a big song. Vibrato is a given, you know, in opera as well, but it's a given that you allow your voice to have that even wave, because that is a natural thing for the voice. It's not natural to straight tone it and keep it down. But I totally understand the reason why. It is so much more direct, and it doesn't leave the world of real people. Once you start to really sing, all of a sudden we're into a musical as opposed to this story with music. And that's what I think they were after with this play, was a story with music.
Is there anything you would like to talk about?
That I would like to talk about? Well, the one thing that I think is unique about this play is that everybody's still alive. So we're all playing people that are still around, that have seen us portray them. And that was a really nerve-wracking thing at the beginning. But what it also instilled in us was an innate obligation to honor these people and to tell their best story and to be their best selves if we could. And indeed, that's what the story's about, these people with this incredible generosity and just doing the work that needed to be done, one foot in front of the other, and also the confusion and the troubles of the people who were stuck there. Every once in a while, if I really, doing this technique of really listening to what everybody's saying and not just blah, 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 my line, blah, 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 my line, if I really listen to everybody, I can become quite involved in the story emotionally, but that's not my job. My job is to just tell the story from my perspective. But it is a very powerful thing that this is all real, that these people actually did experience this, and that we've met them. So that's the thing that I think is the real jewel about this show.
The last question.
Okay.
I know that you had a Come From Kindness concert in support of Daffodil Place on July 29th.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like?
I didn't go. No, I had family in Stratford, and so I decided to go home and do my life because we have one day off a week, and I just thought, I am here all week long. I never see my husband. I have to go home and do this one thing, which is an opportunity to see these people. So I didn't go. But I did do the year before, and it was phenomenal. Just amazing to see everybody get up and do their favorite party tricks, and to see people and their talents in a different light, because we only see one thing every night. So to see all of these differences is a joy. It really is. When I worked at Stratford many years ago, they did cabarets every Thursday night, and it was wonderful for people to get up and express themselves in a completely freeing way. Sometimes it was comedy, sometimes it was music they'd written, sometimes it was text that they wanted to explore. Whatever it was, you just got to see people in a different way, and so it was a way of bridging who are you really. And that was the thing that I think probably is my guess that happened this last time as well. We just appreciate each other's talent so much. And it also feels great to be able to, with an event like that where we're having a ball, to also inspire people to open their purses and just give. That's an incredible thing. And so you feel like you're involved in something bigger than yourself.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is the end of the interview.
Bye.